When to change your screen resolution. Although a resolution of 80 to 100 pixels per inch is ideal for working with digital photos, feel free to change your screen size at any time to meet the task at hand. For example, when I work with InDesign, I set my monitor to display 1600 by 1200 pixels. In other words, I'm working at 100 pixels per inch. I like this resolution with InDesign because it allows me to see a full two-page spread as I'm working on my monthly news magazine, and the text is crisp and easy to read. When working with Photoshop or Photoshop Elements, I like to set my monitor size to 1280 by 960 pixels. This gives me a resolution of 80 pixels per inch on my ViewSonic monitor, which is fine for working with digital photos. It also gives me plenty of screen space to accommodate the photo I'm working on, as well as a variety of on-screen palettes and dialog boxes. Here's the important message. Always set your screen size to suit the task at hand. Use a higher resolution, ideally between 80 and 100 pixels per inch, when you're working with scanned images and digital photos. Finally, don't concern yourself with trying to get your monitor to display exactly 72 pixels per inch. It's simply not a high enough resolution when working with digital images. Resolution of on-screen images. You've now learned that the resolution of a computer monitor in pixels per inch depends on two factors: the physical dimensions of the screen and the number of pixels you choose to display on that screen. You've also seen that the resolution of a computer monitor rarely works out to be 72 pixels per inch. Therefore, it's very unlikely that images scanned at the so-called monitor resolution of 72 ppi will ever display on the screen at their actual size. From now on in this course, we will never refer to the resolution of an image in pixels per inch if that image is being targeted for output on a computer screen. In other words, if we're scanning a picture or sizing a digital photo for a website or a multimedia presentation, we won't be talking about how many pixels per inch the image contains. Instead, when it comes to on-screen images, we'll now refer to the image size purely on the basis of its pixel dimensions. You'll be hearing me saying something like, "This is a photo that's been sized to 300 by 200 pixels, and it's being displayed on a 1024 by 768 desktop." The use of the term pixels per inch for digital photos will only come into play when I'm talking about outputting the image on a printer. We'll explain this in much more detail when we examine resizing images in Chapter 8. Monitor aspect ratio. When you consider the dimensions of my monitor, 16 inches across and 12 inches tall, the ratio of the width to the height is 4:3. This relationship is known as the monitor's aspect ratio. When I set my screen size to 800 by 600 pixels, this ratio is also 4:3. It's important to select a screen size in pixels that has the same aspect ratio as your physical monitor. This ensures that images don't look distorted when they're displayed on your screen. Many video display cards allow you to choose screen resolutions that don't correspond to your monitor's physical aspect ratio. Watch what happens when I switch from 1024 by 768 pixels to 1280 by 768 pixels. These numbers give us a 5:3 aspect ratio. I'll click Apply. When I calculate the resolution in pixels per inch horizontally, I get 1280 pixels divided by 16 inches equals 80 pixels per inch. However, when I calculate the resolution vertically, I get 768 pixels divided by 12 inches equals 64 pixels per inch. So, we have two different resolutions on the screen. Here's how our picture of the boy appears on the desktop. It's not equally proportioned, and the image appears unrealistically narrow. This is the kind of problem you'll encounter when the physical aspect ratio of your monitor does not match your selected screen ratio in pixels. Now, when I display the same photo on a 1280 by 768 desktop using a widescreen monitor that has a physical aspect ratio of 5:3, everything appears perfectly proportioned. The screen dimensions in pixels and the monitor dimensions in inches have matching 5:3 aspect ratios. Watch what happens when I select a screen resolution of 1280 by 1024 pixels. This is a 5:4 aspect ratio. When I calculate 1280 pixels divided by 16 inches equals 80 pixels per inch. Vertically, we have 1024 pixels divided by 12 inches equals 85.33 pixels per inch. This time, the vertical resolution is greater than the horizontal resolution. Here's our photo on my ViewSonic monitor with a 1280 by 1024 desktop. The image is distorted, and this time it looks slightly too wide. That's what happens when we display a 5:4 desktop on a 4:3 monitor. To achieve an undistorted appearance, we'd need to use a monitor that has a 5:4 aspect ratio. Be alert when adjusting the slider in the Display Properties dialog box. Always make selections that match your monitor's physical aspect ratio. Many of the new widescreen monitors being sold today have an 8:5 aspect ratio. Here's a list of some of the more common 8:5 screen resolutions. Summary. We've examined the relationship between monitor size and screen resolution. Although many books and technical documents state that monitors have a resolution of 72 pixels per inch, we now know this is a fallacy. It's helpful to change your desktop resolution depending on the task at hand. When working with digital images, strive for higher resolutions, ideally 80 to 100 pixels per inch. To achieve a realistic and undistorted appearance of your on-screen photos, always select a desktop size with the same aspect ratio as your physical monitor. Finally, since resolution in pixels per inch is a meaningless number for photos that are being targeted for the screen, we'll only refer to image size on the basis of pixel dimensions when creating web pages or multimedia presentations. Now that we've learned how to set up our monitor's canvas, let's explore how to make the colors we put on that canvas as true to life as possible.